Welcome to the Iron Butterfly Podcast. My name is Megan Jaffer.
And I'm Katie Hopkins, and we will be your hosts.
We created Iron Butterfly Podcast in honor of Eloise Page, the original Iron Butterfly. 80 years ago, Eloise joined the Office of Strategic Services, trailblazing a path for what ultimately became the United States intelligence community. She rose the ranks from secretary to case officer, defying the norms of her time, and eventually became the first female chief of station at CIA. Eloise was known among her colleagues to be a fierce fighter with a core of steel, and she earned the codename Iron Butterfly. Our podcast continues her legacy, inviting the unsung heroines of the United States intelligence community to share their stories with aspiring leaders like you. Women in the intelligence community are special because they have dedicated their lives to studying the whole world. And through conversations with hundreds of women in intelligence over the past few years, we have come to understand that the world is at an inflection point. Women hold a more central role in society than ever before, and at Iron Butterfly Media, we are committed to amplifying authentic voices that inspire women to create wherever they are. So pull up a chair. Our changing world needs new ideas made real, which begins with you. Welcome to Iron Butterfly Podcast.
So my name is Lindy Kaiser. I am a director at clearancejobs.com, which is the largest career site for individuals with an active federal clearance and the largest community for cleared professionals. We have more than 1.7 million cleared candidates and more than 2,000 hiring companies. I've been with Clearance Jobs for 13 years, which is a really long time. And I actually got my start in national security, working for the Department of the Army as a public affairs specialist. And then my claim to fame is being the first U.S. Army social media manager, which was a job that actually didn't exist and that I had to create for myself. And that's actually a pattern that's happened across my career, is doing jobs that I wasn't supposed to be doing at the time, and then building a career path out of that. So it's usually advice that I give. And I actually heard Linda Weisgold on the Iron Butterfly podcast talking about that. It's not about your tenure. It's about your abilities often in the IC. So I always say that any chance I get, that if you have the chance to build out a position for yourself, that's usually a great opportunity for women. We are really great at identifying things and finding a path and finding a pathway. And I think the IC is such a great community for finding those pathways. Iron Butterfly is obviously a great organization for identifying and highlighting women's stories and showing those pathways. And if you don't find an organization or agency or entity that recognizes you for that, you can go to clearancejobs.com. Yeah. And we have more than 60,000 job openings right now in the national security, in both government and the private sector. So with that, I'm so honored to be able to sponsor this podcast. And we're so honored to be able to introduce you, Sandra Auchter, who is with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA. You've been with NGA for more than 20 years. Got your start at the U.S. Navy Yard, working as an analyst. I know you've worked as a Middle East analyst, Deputy Associate Director of Capabilities for NGA, which I hear we'll actually learn what that means later on in this podcast. I know that you are a first-generation U.S. American because your parents are from South America. You were raised on 90s hip-hop and Caribbean music, which is fantastic. You love, I think, beer, Beyonce, and hiking, which sounds like a fantastic weekend. So please invite me on that trip. And you've seen Earth, Wind, and Fire 6 times. And you are also currently the director of NGA Denver. I actually currently live in Omaha, Nebraska, which is the gateway to the West. And so this is also a chance to show that you can work in national security and not live in the D.C. metro. So again, Omaha, gateway to the West. I'm the gateway to this podcast. I will turn it over to Katie and Megan for an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Sandra, for being on Iron Butterfly Podcast.
Well, welcome to Iron Butterfly Studios.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Super, super, super excited.
I want our listeners to know that this is extra special for a couple of reasons. So I think you're our first guest out of 6 seasons that have flown in from a different state to be with us in the studio. So that is pretty amazing, and I want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I'm such a fan, and we'll talk about, I wouldn't fly in for anybody else.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we're a fan of you too.
Yeah.
We are definitely a fan of you. Let's tell the story now before we get into it, because it really means a lot to me, and I might even tear up. Go ahead.
It will be the second time because you did.
I did. No, I did.
Yeah.
So about 3 years ago, I went out to Denver for an INSA, an Intelligence and National Security Alliance event that was in Denver. And you were the keynote speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's crazy about it is I go because I'm on the advisory board at INSA, and I go just because I love helping out when they need an extra hand. And so I went that year to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually don't even go in and listen to the speaker because I'm helping out front. And Toya, who's the events director, I'm usually helping her. And that day I went in. Well, first you came up to me when you first arrived.
Okay, we're going to tell this together.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I come in a little bit early. I think it was it at the Gaylord, which is like huge. And I didn't have like my badge, and I didn't have like people with me or whatever. And I come in and I see you, and I wasn't expecting to see you there. And so we're like, hey, you do the hey, and hugs and I was so surprised to see you, because I was gonna reference Iron Butterfly in my speech completely randomly. Okay, you start talking now.
That part of the story is the same for me.
Yeah.
It was great to see you, and I was so excited. And the only reason I went in was because it was you who was speaking. Because I think if anyone else was speaking, I probably would have stayed outside. And so I went in, and I was standing in the back because there were chairs lined up. Yeah. And I think I like snuck in the back, and I was standing up there. I had my phone in my hand like most people do. And all of a sudden you started talking about Iron Butterfly, and I couldn't believe it. Yeah. And
so you didn't tell her when you first
No,
saw
I
her.
told her, I said, I am shocked to see you. I was like, in a good way. And I think you should come in. I think you were going to come in anyway. But I think you'll like what you're going to hear in there. So just,
little teaser.
Yeah. And I rushed to turn on my phone, and I literally went like this and started recording it because I was like, I can't believe this is happening because no one had ever referenced us or spoken about us in that way. And I just started tearing up because the first thing I thought was, the team's not going to believe this, and I wish they were all here because this is a moment for everybody. Yeah. And I just was so shocked and so appreciative and couldn't believe that you felt that way about it. And it meant so much on so many different levels for me. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. So I have to tell you, so in that speech, it was Beyonce. So I mentioned Beyonce.
I remember
I even they're like, what's your favorite song? And we're talking national security, but Beyonce still fits in there, right? And so I've got my T-shirt on in honor because Renaissance had just come out. And one of the things that I talked about was that I was literally listening to that album like every morning.
That's right.
And I'm like, I need to break. Like, I feel like an addict. And so I was like looking for stuff and I found the podcast, and I'd seen it before because of AWIC, et cetera. And I just got hooked. I'm like, first of all, it's about like my two of my favorite subjects, women in national security, and then highlighting all of these stories. Because I have to tell you, I've talked to lots of women who've been in the business for decades. The stuff that they had to go through to sort of like pave the way for me, you all have no idea. And the fact that we're now, sort of sharing their stories, I thought it was just so important. And so Iron Butterfly, Beyonce, and Director Clapper. We're like the themes, and trust me, it all fit together.
It did. It did.
What do Beyonce and Iron Butterfly have in common?
So I think in terms of how she's so supportive of women. at one point during a tour, she had like an all-girl band. And she does it publicly and privately. And she, she's just support. She's in her own space, and she's doing so well for herself, and she wants to give back to those who are coming. And I think there's a lot of connection to me between sort of how she carries herself and how she helps to carry other women as well.
Well, and Beyonce, if you're listening, we're always welcome on Iron Butterfly.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. She's fantastic. So, anyway, so I've been a fangirl of Iron Butterfly for a long time. One of the OGs for Iron Butterfly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that is just that's a personal story that just means a lot to me, and I know it means to the team. So thanks for starting with that.
Yeah.
So
wonderful.
we're going to now jump in and talk about you.
All
Are you
right.
ready?
I am ready. I think I'm ready.
You're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah.
So we start, as you already know, we like to start from the beginning. Like, we want to know, where you're from. Where did you grow up? How did you know about the national security space? Was it something you always wanted to do, or something that you learned about later in life? And, tell us your story.
So I'm a native Washingtonian, like born in D.C., lived on, 7th Street. I don't even think the hospital exists anymore, D.C. General. And my parents are immigrants from Guyana in South America. So they came in the 60s, I want to say. And I spent sort of early years in D.C. We lived in Virginia off and on, but the majority of the time was in suburban Maryland. So went to high school probably 5 minutes away from the University of Maryland College Park.
Oh, wow.
And, great school. And instead of me going to college in some other state, I applied to Stanford, and they turned me down. I was like, pretty
They're
bitter.
lost.
I know, right?
They're
Gorgeous
lost.
campus, but
We'll tag them, by the way.
totally not bitter. 40 years later, totally not bitter. And but I applied to Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, and I remember my high school counselor sort of, we were at a public school, and it just, people didn't apply to schools like that. She's like, well, and you should really try for a safe school, and that's sort of a little above you. And I'm like, thank you very much. And I left the office, and I put my application in.
What is wrong with these guidance counselors?
I'm telling you.
I
was like, are you kidding me? Like, go, hey, this is, I'm really glad that you're, aiming high and support you. And she's like, why are you even bothering? And I was a little sort of dejected by that, but I'm like, I'm going to show her, and I'm going to put my application in. And it was a little, difficult. I had to do an interview with an alum and, take the extra tests and all this other stuff. And I got in.
There you go,
Right?
guidance counselor. No name guidance counselor.
So, what I got into other schools and everything too, but Georgetown is special. It's a Jesuits and their, philosophy on learning and teaching and being self-aware and looking at your values and it's it's Catholic, but one of the things I loved about them, I am not Catholic, but it was, I don't care what your belief system is, what your religion is. At Georgetown, they want you to understand how did you get these values? Why do you think the way that you do? What are the things that influenced you to even have the beliefs that you're having, and to question them and to really understand how you arrived at that? I remember there was a class called The Problem of God, right? And I'm like, I can't believe you have this, priest who's up here teaching about and having questions about it. It was really really fascinating for me and something I really, really appreciated. I didn't just go to school. I got an education
I love that.
at Georgetown.
Did it really change the way that you thought about the world and like yourself and your beliefs?
Yeah. I mean, they, one of the things that, at orientation, they're like, have you ever had an original thought? And I'm like, you guys are getting deep already. I'm not even like in class yet. And you're, like deep like space. And I said, wow, I have never thought about that before. And my answer was like, no, actually. Everything that I'm thinking now, somebody's already thought about that. It's just a foundation. It's just like the intelligence community, right? We are following giants who've paved the way, and we're adding to that. I had a conversation with a colleague because we had, he was, my deputy, and we'd done some really amazing things that are, beneficial to what's happening in Russia, Ukraine right now, sort of our partnerships. And he's like, Sandra, we did that. We started that. If it wasn't for us sort of figuring all this stuff out, they wouldn't be able to be doing the things that they're doing now. And I'm like, yeah, duh. And there's a lot of things that you're going to be, responsible for and that you're going to create, and you're not going to see the benefits of that, right? You're not going to, see those dividends until years later. We're doing this for the folks that are coming after us. And, once you kind of get that into your head about what it is that you're contributing, and that you may not see the fruits of your labor for years, I was like, that's what you need to be proud of. And I think a lot of leaders that I admire recognize that. They're planting the seeds so that generations later can reap the benefits of it. And so I was like, but I know you did it and you're awesome and that's fine. But it needs to, for our community especially, you need to be okay with no one ever knowing what awesome thing that you did that's like in the paper the next day. You can think it in your head to yourself, but you can't, it's in our business, we can't really talk about it. And a lot of times you don't see, again, the fruits of your labor for years and years and years, and you may be retired and long gone and come back. And that was part of the conversation that, when I talked about Director Clapper, and I was like, hey, I'm at this news site, and, you're the one that started it. I want some advice on sort of, how do we approach, growing in the future, et cetera. And do we started out with like 20 some people and it's over 500 now. And he went, what? He had no idea. I'm like,
that's kind of cool.
That was you that did that. And he's got so many other sort of accomplishments, but, and I was like, yeah, and I said, well, part of it is I want to thank you for, now I'm reaping the benefit of leading this amazing team, and they wouldn't be there without you. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm really still stuck on this original thought thing. I don't know.
I think you know.
What's your answer now at this point in your life?
I still think that's the same answer. So I was talking to somebody today and I was like, what if we did this? And he's like, yeah, I thought about that too. And I'm like, I did it first 10 seconds earlier. But I think a lot of times you come in to a new job, especially, and you're like, oh, I can fix this and I've got the solution. And it comes to you immediately. And I go, you got to be a little humble. You'd be like, you cannot be the first person that was like, you have to do it this way. People are not that dumb. You think, or the person that was before you, they clearly have maybe thought about that before. It was a reason it didn't work. Sometimes it's timing, right? Sometimes it's the perfect idea, but it wasn't the right time to implement it. But I don't think I've had an original, no one's ever thought about that before, at least that I know of, right? you're like, I don't know.
No, I think I'm going to be thinking about this.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
forever.
kind of like the chicken or the egg thing, right? That's the way I'm looking at it. And then
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about the people that are inventors.
Yeah.
So
Is it that they
didn't think of it,
yeah,
or they
didn't-
execute
yeah,
it?
that's
Because
right.
we've been
Yeah.
told, we have a mentor who who says the difference when she's talking about Katie and I is that, she says everybody has ideas. Everyone has ideas, but not everyone implements their ideas. And that's
Yes.
the difference,
Yep.
is that you have to be the doer, the implementer, because everybody can come up with something. So I'm wondering if that is a piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe there's no original ideas. Maybe it's just
Okay, I need a 5-page paper, single spaced. I'll give you 2 weeks to get it done.
wow. That's
Okay, so speaking of 5-page paper single space, we're back in college now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at Georgetown.
Mhm.
You're reevaluating your whole life and worldview.
Yeah.
And then how do you end up from Georgetown getting into the national security world?
So, School of Foreign Service is a school that generally, like, you test to get into the Foreign Service and State Department, and or government. And there was heavy recruiting and stuff. It's just, a lot of private schools. And again, I was this public school girl who, I didn't have like a summer home in the Hamptons. And so it was like a culture shock, right? So I remember we took this course, every freshman has to take it, called Map of the Modern World. So this class, I believe they still teach it because it's like everybody's got to go through this gauntlet. So you literally have a blank map of the world. It's pass-fail. Blank map of the world. You got to know where every single country is. You have to know the capital. And they will randomly pick, for these countries, some kind of conflict or something in there that you have to identify.
Wow.
It's pass-fail, and then they have a list of people, like, who's passed and, like, after that. And you're staying up all night. It's insane.
That's intense.
Freshman year, right? When we're sitting in the auditorium, it's 400 of you, and you clearly the students there are interested in foreign policy, but man, that is a level of detail that you're just not expecting. And so from the right off the bat, you're learning about things that are across the globe, all of these kinds of challenges. And then I did regional studies. I worked Africa, and you're supposed to also do have a language because you take the Foreign Service exam. Part of it is language. I was taking at least a couple classes in French. I remember I took this philosophy class, African philosophy, self-perceptions, and it was entirely in French. And I can't believe I can read, but I can't believe I took a college level course. It was entirely in French, and I'm not a French speaker. But I think that it caused me to be obviously interested in what was happening around me, and then growing up in D.C., politics is in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Our nightly news is what's happening in Congress or with the White House, and foreign dignitaries coming, and living in Colorado is much different. It's not the same, and so I have an appreciation now of sort of the bubble that you're in the DMV, and so when I graduated, I took the Foreign Service exam. I did not pass. It's a hard test.
It is a very hard test. It is
really
a very
difficult.
hard test. Yeah.
And I was like, and people try, they multiple times. I'm like, I'm just not. That's not for me. And this was right after the wall fell, and so there's a peace dividend, which means they're not hiring in the government. And so I ended up working at the Girl Scouts.
Oh, wow.
in DC.
That's awesome.
That's
Right.
really
So I did a
cool.
pivot, and I still wanted to do something nonprofit, and I was thinking about Peace Corps and things, and it didn't quite work out that way. And so I spent a few years at the Girl Scouts.
Were you a
and-
Girl Scout?
No, I was not a Girl Scout. It's an incredible organization, and I was doing like admin work. I think it was in the training department, and so wonderful volunteers, wonderful organization, bit toxic at work. And so I remember I'd come home. I'd have my son, he was like a year old, and I and I'd come home. I'd just be exhausted and just complaining. And one day, my ex at the time, my husband, was like, "You are miserable, and they are killing your soul and spirit. You have to quit." And mind you, I'm in my 20s with just one car. I have a little baby, and I'm like, okay, I'm quitting. So I go in one day and I give my two. I don't have a job. I don't know what I'm doing, and but I did it, and I felt like such a relief when it happened. And I swore to myself, never, ever, ever will I be in a job for any length of time where when I go there and I drive, I just
Dread it.
you dread it going in the building. I said I will never do that again. And it took me a few years after that. I was doing temp work, and eventually I said, okay, I got to actually do something with this expensive degree. It's like roaming and doing these random temp jobs it's paying the bills, but it's not sort of a career. And I looked in USA Jobs, which is like the worst way to go in, but it's just so painful. And I saw the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, because we weren't NGA yet. And they had some random description about sort of what they were doing. And I looked down and I'm like, oh, they take my degree. They want people with my degree. And so I put in, and it took months for them to get back to me. And meanwhile, I'm temping. I'm at the American Federation of Teachers. So, and I really enjoyed working there. But I'm like, I gotta do something with this degree. And I remember got a call to do an interview. And I went into the Navy Yard. The building doesn't even exist anymore. It's this old building with rat traps, and now it's all nice there. But I go in, I've got my suit on, I'd taken the subway, and the guard was there, and he's like, "Hey, you there? You coming in for an interview?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, you got this, girl." And I'm like, what is he like? Okay, thanks.
Oh my God, that's so nice.
So I go in, and I usually they have a panels that one guy there who's interviewing me, and we do the interview and everything. And he's like, "Hey, normally we have a panel of folks." He goes, "But I'm a hiring official, so I can hire you, and I'm hiring you on the spot." He goes, "What do you want to work?" And I was like, I didn't want to tell him like, "Dude, I just need a job. Like,
Yeah.
I'll do, like, what do you need me to do? I'll do it." It's like, well, I have a background in Africa and French language. I was really cool with it, right? It's totally fine, because the guard told me I was getting this job. So offered the job. And so you think, oh yeah, okay, conditional offer of employment. 18 months later.
Oh,
right?
man, yeah.
It took forever. It's so much better now. But I remember leaving, and the guard, he's like, "How'd you do it?" And I was like, "I got a job."
Oh my
I was all
God.
excited. And he's like, "I told you were gonna." And I didn't know until later that if you get to the point where you're doing the interview, it's like almost assured. They got to make sure that you're not like crazy. And but the guard knew, because people come in all the time.
But that was still
it was
really
still
nice.
it was very, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I was talking to a mentee today, and she was telling me about something that happened weeks ago, and she said, you saw me and you gave me a big hug, and she's like, "You don't know how much that meant to me. I really needed it that day." And that guard, like, I don't know who he is, but I so needed that. I think I got a little extra lift because he said, I see you and you got this. And I was like, and you don't even know me and you support me. So those little things that you do, and it's happened a lot where people don't know how important a kind word is or a kind gesture.
It doesn't cost anything
It
to be
doesn't.
kind, to lead with love. And to your point, you don't know what the other person, is going through. And
Yeah.
that small little thing
Yeah.
can change.
Yeah, I honestly believe that that was the little push there, but yeah,
Oh my gosh. So that began your career at NGA.
It did. This was in April 2000. I joke because I'm in Colorado now. I'm like, oh, it's 420, and
That's amazing.
and then I love. There's some people who are like maybe a little bit older. They're like, I don't get it. I don't get that reference. I get big laughs in Colorado though. Anyway, so I started. So one of the few, we don't have a lot of folks now who are in the business that got in before 9/11, and like my trajectory and sort of what my career was going to be before 9/11 and what happened after, it was just amazing. And I went to the memorial and I was this young girl and she wasn't even born, like she was born way after. And I was like, people don't realize that families could go all the way up to the gate and without having a ticket or whatever, and you could carry your bottle of water with you. It doesn't matter how many ounces you keep your coat. Like it was just night and day. And I remember on 9/11 I was at work and I had it was like a big find I had. It was huge. And so I was getting like my report done. I had to take it to the editors and have my team lead read it, whatever. And we had TVs on. And because you always got to like pay attention to the news, to BBC and CNN. And I remember I just finished my report and there was all of this hullabaloo on the TV. And we're like, and I saw this plane hit the building. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And like a couple weeks before, I think there was like a small plane that hit a house or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird that that's happening in downtown. And then another plane hit. And I was like, oh, no, that's not right. And my team lead, who he's like this airplane buff. And he's like, it's not a small plane. Sandra, that's a... And so everything just stopped. And everyone is just watching the TV. And it was so surreal. There were different channels on, and so it was like echoing through the vault, and it was surreal. So my little report, like whatever it was, like it was just done. It was like nothing was happening. I remember we evacuated at one point to like the first floor of our building, and I'm in my head I'm going, nobody cares about this building. Doesn't even have windows. Like nobody knows what's going on here, but we're gonna go down. But my good friend, her husband was at the White House, and I think he's talked about this in press before. Sean Sherman. And so she was like beside herself, and nobody could get through. The phones were just jacked up, and so she was so worried about him. And in my head, I was like, well, that's a target. Like our little building with no windows, but the White House is clearly, you can see it, and it's a big target. So, and I remember driving home that night, and it's on 295. Because I lived way in Bowie, shout out to Maryland. And it was empty. Like, and for folks who live in the DMV, like it's like 4:30 in the afternoon. That's ridiculous. It was empty. I had all the lanes to myself. driving home, and I pick up my son, who was 2, I don't know how old he was, and we're looking at the news, and I'm crying. He's like, "Mom, why are you so upset?" It's like a bad guy did something really bad to people. A lot of people got hurt, and I got so angry that I'm having to explain to my 3-year-old, like something evil like that, and I couldn't wait to get back to work the next day. Everybody came to work. You thought people were going to be too upset to and everybody, and they were like, "What do I need to do? How can I help? How can we help the one person who's working in Afghanistan?" There's one guy who was working, and that changed overnight. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's I've never heard it, discussed that way, where you come back in and you were like, every single person was there. No one stayed home and was too scared. They were like, okay, this is what we do. What do we do now?
Yeah.
How can I help?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What do you remember? Like you said, it was like a surreal day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you remember feeling that day?
I was feeling that they hadn't prepared me for this. Like, I wasn't ready. Like, it was so life-changing. And I felt privileged to be a part of that community. And that I knew that whatever work I was doing was going to help us catch the people that did this, and for those families who lost loved ones, for them to have some peace, no matter how long it took. And I kept, throughout my career, that's been consistent across the board. I was a deputy division chief for counterterrorism. One of my most fulfilling jobs. I love my current job. That was one of my, I love you guys. But that, I remember, I tell my son, he's 26, I said, you don't know how fortunate you are to be an American. And, if you were missing or something happened to you overseas, this is the country you want looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't sort of name who, but there was an American who was missing for years. And it was like a cold case, right? And my analysts that were working it were just dogged about it. They're like, okay, I got this piece of information. And however they felt about that individual, they were relentless in trying to figure out what happened to this person, what clues do we have, and sort of piecing it all together. And I remember we had a furlough. We've had lots of those government shutdowns. And as managers, we had to give out papers and stuff to people. Okay, you report to work, you don't report to work. And if anybody's sort of guessing, all the managers were like, we are not essential. It's all the people that are actually doing work that are essential. And I had a junior analyst come in. He's like, been with us a couple of years. And he's like, hey, I think I'm really close on something related to this. And he goes, you don't have to pay me. I'm just going to come in and work. And I'm like, oh, honey, I wanted to hug him, which would have been really inappropriate. I was like, it's like legally you can't, like, I understand sort of like your commitment and everything, but you cannot come in even if we're not going to pay you. And that's the country that I live in. And those are the kinds of patriots who are working for the American people every single day.
I think that's so important. We cannot, overstate that or say it enough. Yeah. For the folks, we live this every day, right? We know the folks that work at these agencies and what they do, and, that they put their whole selves into their work. But I one of the reasons why we do this podcast, there are many, but one of the reasons is for the people who are not in this area to understand the people behind the work, the people behind the organization.
Yeah.
You know, what they see on the news or what they see in Hollywood is not the people who are actually working.
Yeah.
That story, that is an example of the people who work for our organization. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. And I want to, I'm outside of the Beltway bubble, and I talk about what it is that we do, and in the national security sphere, and GON in particular, because we're the foundational end. I know you've had like others who are coming in with the SIGINTers and the HUMANTers. But everything has to happen in time and space, and so GON is that foundation. So anyway,
She's going to start a
just
fight.
putting that out there.
You are, Tish Long, who I know you know, says you are the agency, not because usually when you say the agency, people think of CIA.
Yeah.
This is some insider information for those not in the belt, who don't live in this area. But the folks at NGA will say they are the agency.
Absolutely. But so I think, sort of to my earlier point, the rest of the country is like they're doing their own thing. And they're not aware. They don't know what we do. It's behind, all of these walls. And I want to sort of normalize talking about not to reveal secrets and, methods, sources and methods, but to talk about our values, to talk about the playbook that we use, which is the Constitution, in order for us to do what it is that we do. It is a calling to do this. I could make a lot more money elsewhere. A lot of new folks that are coming in are doing this. They get stuck because of the mission. But we're in a time now where we share a lot. It's social media. My husband and I take pictures of our beer, our food, and we post it, which is, again, I laugh at it, but we do it all the time because we're just sharing about, the IPA of the day. And, but yet we haven't really normalized talking about what it is that we do that allows me to go to, breweries and hiking and to have my way of life. There are thousands of people who are working every single day in order for that normalcy to happen. And I also think it's important for folks who look like me, who are in my package, to be able to share about my experiences so that people who are thinking about working in my business know that there's someone already here who's doing it, and it's it's a big tent. Again, it is a calling. It's not for everybody. I love quoting one of my favorite shows, Empire, Cookie Lions, and Cookie says, "The streets ain't for everybody. That's why they make sidewalks." Right? And
Jay's the street.
But it's true. It's they're nasty things that you see. We are trying to have a competitive advantage, and it's not, you don't want it to be a fair fight. Like I mean, it's stealing secrets and protecting our own, within the confines, again, of the Constitution. But that is not palatable to some people, and that's okay. That's fine. One of the things that I want to do for myself is to educate myself on the things that are not national security related. And so if I want to truly be good at my business, I need to understand how, this discipline is used in other places. So it's a big enough tent, but this is, like I said, national security is a calling, and it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
So tell us, bring us, to where you are now in Colorado. Like, give us some of your stepping stones that you made throughout NGA and what brought you to Colorado, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
So I started out as an analyst. I like to say a GS nothing, and working different issues. And I always I remember my first TDY was to Italy, which is like tough gig, right? But I had a branch chief who really. She's like, I need you to go to Italy. I need you to do this exercise. I need you to, work another issue that, the person who had that account couldn't go. And I was like, are you kidding me? She's like, you're going to be fine. And so I did it. It was 3 weeks. I was fine. And that was the impetus for me to say, you know what? Even though it's not my account, I may not have all of the answers, I can do things that will take me out of my comfort zone and be okay. And so I did my first rotation over at Langley. I was working in the ops center there, and then came back. I went to school for a bit, working part-time, and then I got a call to work in the front office for Admiral Moret. And it's like, I'm in school, and they're like, well, they need somebody who's got a mission background to help with his communications. I'm like, I can write, but blank sheets of paper scare me. Like, I don't want to start. And so I got an interview with him. I remember it was on a Friday. I was in jeans, and we had an early release. And they're like, the Admiral's, there's 3 stars coming to brief you. I was like, I got to go pick up my son to go to the dentist. And they're like, well, that's okay. And he came in, and like that Monday, I was in the front office of our agency doing communications for the 3-star. And so every couple of years, I would do things that were completely sort of like out of my comfort zone. And so I went from there, and I worked counterterrorism. I'd never done that before. I was coming in as a stranger, and, they didn't really know me. I hadn't deployed. They kind of hated me at first. They ended up, we all loved each other, but it was really, I had to really prove myself with that team. And again, one of the most formative assignments that I've had. And then after that, I was promoted. I was Sue Gordon's first sort of cohort, so very proud of that fact. I ended up, my first assignment as a senior was in the office that I started in as an analyst.
Oh, no way.
That's really cool.
I was like,
cool. Full circle.
This is insane. And my very first branch chief ended up coming back as a branch chief in that office. And she said, we were talking, and she's like, I was like, I know this is a little weird. She's like, no, it's not. She's like, people were asking me, how do you feel about working for Sandra, as she's like the office director, and you're here as a branch chief, all these years later. She's like, I feel good. Clearly I did a great job.
Oh, that was really nice.
So, I've had sort of, I moved up into the front office again as the Deputy Associate Director for Capabilities. Again, they were looking for folks who had mission experience. And I joke about the fact that, coming from the analytic operations footprint and then going into that job, which was IT and research. And I said, now I'm in a job, all the things I complained about folks not doing, I was now responsible for. And I was like, oh, that's why, that didn't work, because you don't put requirements in right. And it was, again, sort of felt like a fish out of water. But, I learned so much in those assignments. And so, again, seeing the agency at that level as part of the XCOM and, working with Dr. Dixon, I got to tell you, I'm sharing this with you now. So when she was announced as our new deputy, I'd known her before. She'd had other assignments in the agency before. I get emotional just thinking about it. I remember they have on the wall like all of our leadership, our director, deputy director, and the 80s, and they put her picture up there, and it was the first time I'd seen a woman of color up there, and I got emotional. I was like, "Are you?" I was so proud, and I'm like, I'm tier 2 senior, and representation for me, it's important for me. So I can imagine for others how important it is. I believe I've told her this. If not, she will now hear this.
She's going to hear it. We'll tag her.
Yeah, she will now hear this.
It's a good tag though.
Yeah. And so I remember going into her office for the first time, and just talking to her and just again fangirling. She's amazing, and she had a sign in her office, and it says, "You belong here." I was like, I was like, that is amazing. And I shared this story with her about kind of, imposter syndrome, sort of representation, et cetera. I was like, that is such a powerful reminder for anyone coming in here, like anybody who has doubts. Like, somebody said that you were qualified, that they wanted your skills, they wanted your voice to be here. You belong here. And she's like, I gotta remember to put that up. And when she went over to be the deputy over DNI. But I am so blessed to have had Tish Long as an example, and Dr. Dixon and Sue Gordon. And I'm proud of my agency that we've had such amazing role models. It's just, it's been an amazing career. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, role models that are for the record books.
Oh, absolutely.
For the record books.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was deputy AUC for a few years, and during the COVID years, and that was just tough on everyone, right?
Totally.
We had to figure out how to telework. I was standing up this new directorate. We were talking about some of the sort of lessons learned and how we capture them, and I was leading all of this. And another guest of yours, Anjima, we were like office mates, well, next to each other. And we were kind of working all of the same things. And it was just a lot that was going on. And my sweet spot is about 3 years in a job, and I've been there for a little over 4. So I was ready to do something different. And the expectation for me was to sort of lead a larger organization. And I saw this assignment that came up out in Colorado. I'm like, huh. And it's on a base, which I'd never worked on a base before, with 2 other agencies, with NSA and NRO. And it's away from the flagpole. I was like, I've not done any of those things. And I think I will be a better officer for doing it. So I talked to some of my mentors, and I talked to my boss at the time, Phil, and it's like, hey, I'm interested in doing this. He's like, I 100% support you, 100% support you. And I remember he got a call from the hiring official, and she's like, Sandra put in for this job. She's on the top of the list. You're gonna lose her. And he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna lose her. We're gonna gain a great officer, out in Colorado. And so, and it was the first time I think I'd applied for a position. Usually I get tapped on the shoulder and they're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you? And at that point in my career, I wanted to choose. It wasn't like the tap on the shoulder was bad. Like I got amazing assignments because folks were like, I think you can do this. I'm like, are you sure? Because this doesn't look like I can do this. And they were right, right? So a lot of times you don't see places that you could be. You need somebody else to kind of see that for
Yeah.
you, you know? And so, but this time I wanted to choose and you know, got the job and had to go through that wonderful PCS process, which was not great. It took forever. And I got there and I got a warm welcome. I at least knew some of the folks there. And oh my goodness, it has been absolutely incredible.
Is it what you expected when you applied?
So I thought I knew. You always think you know. And you know, I'm a 20 plus year GM winter. So I go in there and I'm like, I got this. I know all that. And I don't know all this. And I'm learning a ton, working with those partners there as well, helping to really, you know, reinvigorate this ecosystem that's out there that just needs some shaping, right? And so one of the things that I'm working on that I want to plant the seed, I probably will not see the benefit of this before they pull me back into DC, is to, you know, for the geospatial community and that national security apparatus to have, you know, to meet, to have a connection to our agency. We are in a place right now in competition where we are going to need industry and academia side by side. This is not something where we have the competitive advantage only in government. If we want to remain competitive and have that competitive advantage, we absolutely need to make sure that we have our industry partners alongside us. So what I'm trying to do is to ensure that, you know, that DC bubble that will also always be there, that we expand that, you know, across the Mississippi and to include Denver in that as well, because I do think that Denver has so much to offer. Colorado has so much to offer in that space. And I do think it's important that we have the entire nation participating in this thing we call national security and not have it be just in that area. So to the extent that I can, you know, bring Denver into the fold and Colorado and Utah a little bit, so that we're a lot more connected than we are, I think, you know, I will be like, okay, ready to come on back to DC.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love hearing you talk about your work because you can tell how impactful it feels to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you said this a little bit earlier, but like we're big believers in like it really is small things that you do and it's planting seeds and it's like watching them grow over time. Like we've built a company around the butterfly effect and like we really believe in that. I'm curious for you, like how have you seen that manifest for you?
For me, ooh. For me. So I think I talked a little bit again about that my first, you know, TDY and someone believing in me and saying, okay, this is something that you can do, and having that confidence throughout my career. I think my team that I had when I was working in counterterrorism, I remember I got and I always get these sort of years later, and I forget that I've done them. I had a analyst who was deployed, and it was a new deployment, and you know, there was a lot of controversy about even setting this up and how the kind of work that they were doing, et cetera. And so she'd been out there for a bit, and she'd made a call like on a weekend, like, this is what we're going to do. And one of the leads that was back here came into my office. He was just like upset. He was like, she shouldn't have made the call, and this, this is not how we do this. And it's like, you just let them vent. And I said, put her out there for a reason. She needs to be able to like make these calls, and we have to trust them. Otherwise, why are we sending them? Thank you very much for your support. And then I called her, overseas, and it's like, hey, you're doing a great job, and completely support you. And she told me years later, and I forgot about this. Years later, she told me, she's like, Sandra, you have no idea how much that meant to me. She's like, we were taking incoming. Like, she's like, it was a crazy day. And you just calling to go, I support you. And, I appreciate what you're doing meant so much. And not to say that others haven't done that, but it was one of those things where might have been sort of not much trust there, but it was that little thing that when she came back, she's like, all right, she's okay now. Like she's like, she's one of us, and that wasn't why I did it, but it really did help to, because they weren't always like working as a team. But they knew that they had the support of a manager there. And then I remember another time I had someone who was putting in for promotion, and he called on a weekend. He had to get an interview and all this other stuff too. And he's like, Sandra, how do I? And I was like, I'm like missing Sunday dinner, and talking to him about sort of how he should prepare and everything. And then a couple weeks later, I'm visiting the site, and I come in through the door, and he's standing there, and he's like, Sandra got promoted. And we start hugging and jumping up and down, and like he's a manager now, and that other person, like they're those little things that keep him motivated, and to have them show others how to be compassionate and to lead is extremely, extremely important. Somebody, folks did that for me. And I want to be able to sort of extend that for others. So
you bring it back to the security guard who said, you got this, girl.
Totally.
You bring it back.
I had forgotten about that until we talked it. So, super cool.
Our next and final question.
Yeah?
You already know what it is.
I do.
And so I'm gonna repeat it for
What's
the
my
listeners.
favorite album of all time?
We can start with that. What's your favorite?
Everybody's got to like answer as well.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. No, not hard. Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life.
Oh, that's great.
Come on, you can.
I don't know about an album.
Can we change the question
Okay.
to your walk-up song?
Oh.
She's doing this on purpose because she wants me to say mine.
Okay, I do want to hear yours too. Method Man, Bring the Pain.
Yes. Yes. Who wants to go
90s
next?
hip hop, gotta do it.
Hey.
Yes.
I'll go next because
Okay.
it's fitting.
It is. It's on
fitting,
brand.
but inappropriate.
I love that.
So I am also a 90s, early 2000s hip hop from Chicago. So it's Luda, Move Bitch.
Yes! Get out the way.
Get out the way.
I love it.
So, yes, it's, I don't think I could play that at a conference, but
No.
You know what's so funny?
But I was thinking about that as we were driving here. I was like, oh,
it gets me hyped.
I
love
thought
it.
she was joking when I first asked
No,
this
but
question.
tell her the story. Tell her the story.
So I thought she was joking. I was like, Megan, you are full of shit. Like, there is no way that's your walk-up song.
Yeah.
No way. She goes, watch. She texts her two best friends from home and says, what is my walk-up song?
Yeah.
And both of them within 30 seconds responded immediately. Both said Luda,
so
Move Bitch.
so you have said this in public. This is fantastic. This is it, man.
Katie's is good. It's not expected.
Katie.
Mine is Good Vibrations by Marky Mark.
That is a great one.
Great song.
Oh my God. But
Great
so those
song.
are songs that as soon as you hear them, you're
Yeah.
like, you're
Yeah,
ready.
you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to sing it right.
Good vibrations.
You got to start with music next time. And
So here's the problem. I would love,
Yeah.
we have friends, one of which is Carmen Medina. Do you know Carmen?
Yeah.
She has a podcast called
Pandas Playing Cello.
Pandas Playing Cello. And they, at the end of their podcast, they dance. They put on music and dance. The problem is YouTube, because of rights,
Okay.
we can't play the music.
Okay. We can mention it though. Right?
Oh, we can
talk
mention it,
about
and
we
we
can
will
sing it ourselves.
We can sing it, and we can tag all of the people in there. One day, someone is going to hear us. I hope, actually, I hope Luda. Hey,
Luda, yeah.
Luda, Megan loves
Luda,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Okay, what were we talking about?
So we have to get back to our final question, which is keeping with the name of our podcast, Iron Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to give yourself a code name, what would it be and why?
So I already have a code name that was given to me.
Ooh.
When I left the counterterrorism division, and this was given to me by the ladies of counterterrorism,
I love it.
who said, "Hey, this is something that's fitting. We super appreciate having, because that business. It's like there's a lot of dudes,
Yeah.
a lot of dudes. So the women there are absolutely amazing, and they said, "You're badassy. You are badass and classy." And I have a mug that's in my office that says Team Badassy.
Oh.
So all of those ladies are on this team. So shout out LZ, Victoria, Melinda. And I was just so touched because again, it was a journey for all of us. Again, coming in and not being part of that team and then leaving. I always say when you leave a job and you're crying your eyes out because you're going to miss everybody, which that was the case. And so I had already had that call sign, and I will take it with me for the rest of my life.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Victoria in your team was, I'm not going to say her last name, but starts with an N.
Yes.
She's the best.
V Money? Are you kidding me?
I mean, literally the best.
Yeah.
And she is a badass as well.
I'm telling you, the whole team. And I didn't want to use people's names, but and Lauren's doing big things as well. And all of them were just Sarah,
That's
Amanda.
A great team. Holy moly.
They're absolutely incredible. And every time I think of mentors or other women that came before me, I'm like, that fits, badass and classy. Love it.
Oh, what a way to end.
I know, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on, for doing this, for saying yes, for being our OG fan, for loving Iron Butterfly as much as we do.
We love you.
Oh, I love you all too.
There's been a
Katie.
trend lately on social media that you can tell how old you are based
By
on
doing
the type
this?
of heart.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm old. Okay, everybody in the room. Everyone,
We have a couple Gen Zers in the room and they're giggling at
Taylor
you because
Swift
they saw your heart.
it's okay.
That's okay.
I'm gonna own it.
I think
I'm
that's
totally fine
absolutely-
with my generation.
Yeah.
Sandra, this has been long overdue. We are thrilled that you came on. We're so thankful to have you in our corner. We are thankful that you are serving our country and you are protecting our nation and our people. And you are welcome back anytime.
I will take you up on that. And you all are welcome out in colorful Colorado anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
You better watch out.
Yeah.
Better watch out for what you ask for because
Yeah.
it's going to happen.
I love it. Thank you all so much. What you all are doing is so, so very important. Amplifying women's voices, especially in this community. There's so many sort of major fines and things in this community that if not for women, it would not have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it with my own eyes. We just, we really do need to support, and you're doing it in such a special way. And thank you for asking. I'm so super, like you again, OG fan, right? And I got that email, and I cannot thank you enough. And thank you for what you're doing for this community.
Oh.
We really appreciate it.
Well,
See you next
Until next time.
Until next time. Awesome. Thank you.
This has been an episode of Iron Butterfly Podcast. We want to thank the National Security Institute at George Mason Scalia Law School, our founding sponsor, and Amazing Women of the IC for their promotion. To learn more about Iron Butterfly Media, visit our website at www.ironbutterflymedia.com. You can also learn more about NSI and upcoming events at nationalsecurity.gmu.edu. And to find out more about AWIC, email amazingwomen.ic@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Lastly, we want to thank our podcast producer, Amanda Young, and the entire Iron Butterfly team. Stay fierce, and we'll talk next time.